one day, he went to his aunt's house in New Jersey, and on his way out of that house, Aunt Jean handed him that frosted flake box.
And walking back to my office, I passed like 4 dumpsters. And for some reason, I didn't throw the box into the dumpster. I mean, I don't know what it was about an empty cereal box that I decided to save. You know, I had never saved a cereal box before that. And anyway, I brought it back to my office, put it on the floor, continued working on other projects I was doing. And it was a couple of weeks before I actually noticed the Frosted Flakes box on the ground and just like took it in a mad moment. I had a piece of cardboard left over from the last writing pad I was using. I took the Frosted Flakes box, I cut the cover off of it, I cut it into pieces, and I glued them down in a mixed up way onto that piece of cardboard, and I tacked it up. It started to grow on me, the idea of it, and I just thought, wow, this is different than anything else. It's such a universal image. I think it was about a month later that I started doing cereal boxes. I said, well, I want to do every brand in this way, where I take it apart and put it back together. Over 3 years, I ended up cutting up over 700 cereal boxes. And then I had started getting into other products like other iconic brands, Ritz crackers, Lipton tea, Arm & Hammer baking soda, you know, Cascade, Tide, Diet Coke cartons, I mean, everything. But certain ones I did many versions of, and I think I did probably another 1,000 collages over the next 3 to 5 years of products. All that turned into taking pieces from all different packages and putting them together into some of these other ideas that, you know, that I've developed, whether it was color-based or logo montages or characters from hundreds of brands all grouped together to famous text and representations of famous scenes. But it really all stemmed from that Frosted Flakes box, because that was my first use of that as a material.
We pretty much grew up with cereal boxes everywhere all the time. Our basement where we played, there was like a section of it that was pretty much like a sea of cereal boxes, and none of which that we ate, you know. So whenever we would be at someone's house and see that they maybe had like Fruit Loops, you know, with the toucan on it, be like, oh my gosh, my dad would love that.
Cerealism was a joke name that I gave my first collages that I made out of cereal boxes. You know, I think a lot of the names of art movements were either originally jokes or often insults. You know, the Impressionists, they called them the Impressionists because they said, that's not a real painting, that's like a sketch, that's an impression. And then eventually they took that as a badge of honor. I made up a joke name. And it's funny now, because now I'll go to certain places and they're like, this is Michael Albert, he invented cerealism. But it's really just the art that made out of cereal boxes, you know, and something like this Declaration of Independence, for example, you'll notice it's not just cereal boxes, it's all different types of printed cardboard consumer packages. It's almost like I've taken to dissecting our consumer culture by image and letter and color and words and phrases and all the little markings that are on these packages. And these companies have spent all this time and money to sort of brainwash us to know their brand, you know, just by a color or by their font or by their character or, you know, their tagline. I like the idea of taking that investment and that motive and kind of turning it around and using it to express the things that I feel are interesting and meaningful. After a while, I just thought to myself, well, if I do cerealism, if I did my interpretation of The Last Supper, it would be The Last Breakfast. And so that was a very meaningful piece for me, also because it was one of the first where I took elements of many different packages and put them together. And realizing that at the Last Supper, it was Jesus and the 12 apostles, I decided to make my surreal fruithead guy the central figure, surrounded by 12 characters from consumer brands to represent that. And then I had some messages in the background. It was mostly just random stuff, but it also said, love thy neighbor and, do unto others. And I just thought, wow, this is interesting. So from there, I did other depictions of famous scenes. I was limited by the 12, so my next piece was a 32 by 40 inch piece that was the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount has the lemon man giving his message now to the multitudes. So I was able to put hundreds of characters and all sorts of, from big to small. It was almost like they were, like he was giving his message to a crowd. And then also in the background were a lot of random messages like do unto others, love your neighbor. I loved the idea of these messages in text in these pieces, and that led to me wanting to do a piece that was just all text.